Thank you. You got somebody announced the page of the blue book? You got everybody found?
37.
37. Okay, great.
You know that the gematria from the Amen is more big one, like the Berachot.
Right.
Even it's like if you don't cite Amen, it's not complete.
Right.
So
Right.
actually, it's like the Kedusha becoming big one. It's like the Micha.
Right. So I'm just going to start off with a story today,
Yeah.
just because we're starting this new chapter, but the last chapter was so sweet. It's hard for me to leave that last chapter. And I remember a story that Rabbi Shlomo used to tell about when he was a yeshiva bocher by Rabbi Shlomo Hyman. Rabbi Shlomo Hyman, no relation, but a very, very special Rav. He never had children. But so they were learning in yeshiva. For those of you who have learned Gemara, Be'iyun, here in yeshiva or elsewhere, so you know sometimes you can go, you're going day after day, week after week on the same little piece of Gemara, and you can start to feel like, like when are you going to see the rest of the Gemara? So at a certain point, they had been a couple of months on this one piece of Gemara, this one little shtickle, and the Bochrim complained to the Rebbe. They said, we have to go weiter, we have to go on. It's too much. So he said, how can we go on? There's so much more to learn in this piece. But he listened to the Bochrim, they went on. So after a couple of months, Rav Shlomo went into his office. He went to go see him in his office, and he saw that he had the Gemara open to that same page, that same sugya that they were on. And he said, Rabbi, you're still learning this? He said, how can I leave it? How can I leave it? It's so sweet. So just the one thing I want to repeat from last week, because I think it's just so important of a way of framing everything that we do in Avodat Hashem, and that unbelievable clarity of the Ramchal that is in the equal band, and that he said that every mitzvah, every halacha, every time that we're trying to Avodat Hashem in our life, all the different things that we're doing, the most basic form of understanding it is that we're turning towards Hashem. It's a moment of turning towards Hashem. And so even if you're focusing on the nuance of a halacha, right? So how do I tovel this kli? I'm taking my dishes to the mikveh. How do I do it? What's the right way to make the bracha? How to make the bracha? Speak in between all the different things. You're focusing on the nitpicky, but just realize that at that moment, and you're seeking to try to do the halacha, to fulfill the halacha properly, this is a way of turning towards Hashem. And when you remember that and you reframe it like that, it really changes the whole feeling of everything that we're doing. Okay, that was it. I'm not going to do a lot of times I say I'm going to do a 1 minute recap, and it turns out doing a 30-minute recap. We're going to go like that. So Perek Chamishi, and it's called V'chelkei Abriya U'matzavehem, the different parts of creation and the states, the different states of creation, and their states, the states of the different parts. Let's jump in. Aleph. Chelkei klal abriya hem gashmim veruchanim. We can categorize all of the things that were created, all of Hashem's creation, into two general categories: spiritual and physical, or physical and spiritual. Agashmim hem amugashim b'chushay. How do we define physical, and how do we define spiritual? So it says physical are those that we can feel, that we can feel and experience with our senses. Right? We have our senses. Whatever can be picked up and experienced through the senses is called physical. And among the physical creations, there's two categories. There's the upper ones and the lower ones. This is talking about the heavenly spheres. We talk about the heavenly spheres. We're not talking about the spiritual ones. We're talking about the sun and the moon and the stars and outer space. The planets and the stars. They're physical. And the lower ones, there's everything that is contained in this physical world. Haaretz, V'amayim, Ha'avir, the earth, the water, the land, the air, and everything all physical creations that are within the world. Right? So that's all the physical creations. Spiritual beings are those that have no physicality. Right? That's their definition. Bilti murgashim me'achushenu. They're not felt or sensed with our senses. You might be able to have an experience of sensing a spiritual being, but it's not with your senses. It's not with your five senses, right? When we talk about seeing an angel, for instance, it's not real. It doesn't mean actually physically seeing an angel, right? And when we talk about hearing prophecy, right, another one of our senses, it's not actually hearing it, but that's the just like Hashem doesn't have an hand, right? When we say that Hashem has an outstretched arm and right picks us up, Al Mitzrayim. Right, and the Rambam explains that that's just a way of us understanding, because it's the closest that we can come to understanding experientially what the experience is like. So too, when a person hears prophecy, it's not that he actually physically hears, but it's the hearing is the closest experience that we have to be able to describe what the experience of receiving prophecy is like. That makes sense? But we can't. But spiritual things cannot be picked up with our physical senses. It's two different wavelengths, two different planes, right? But in any event, those are spiritual things that they're not picked up with our senses. Umitchalkim l'shnei minim, and they can also be categorized into two subcategories. Ha'echad nishamot, one is souls. V'hasheni nivdalim. The second one is nivdalim, which literally translates as separated things, right? So Rabbi Kaplan translates as transcendental beings, right? They're separated in the sense that we'll see in a minute, because nishamot, souls, although the majority of souls are probably not in physical encasements in this world, but souls actually come down into the body. That's us here today, right? But nivdalim, angels, angelic souls, they don't come into a body, right? So they're nivdal in that sense. They're separated from the physical world entirely. Souls are those spiritual creations, which are appointed to go be placed inside of bodies. And to be limited by the body, right? To go within the confines of the body and be limited by it, and also to be connected with a very, very strong connection with the body. In order to function on the body, to do different things with the body, at different times. Meaning for a limited amount of time. There's no such creation as a soul that's meant to be permanently in a body, right? In one particular state. Hanivdalim, so that's souls. Hanivdalim, the transcendental beings, which we'll see is he's talking about angels. Hem minanivraim aruchanim. It's partially angels. We'll see. Sorry, excuse me. These are spiritual beings, bilti mu'utadim legufot kla, which are not ever to be placed inside of a body or into physicality. But nechlakim l'shnei chalakim, and this also can be subcategorized into two different categories. Ha'echad nikraim kochot. One is called kochot, which is energies or powers, forces, spiritual forces. V'hasheni malachim, and the second is angels. V'gam hem ima'alot rabot v'shonot, and all those are also in angels. There's many different levels of angels. You guys know that you guys are familiar with some of them, right? Ofanim, right? Chayot HaKodesh, Safim, right? Safim Mala, Safim Mata. There's all different kinds of levels of angels. V'lehem chukim tivim b'mitziutam, and they have natural laws governing how they function. Kefi ma'alotem u'madrigotam, according to their level, according to their place in creation. So even though there's many different kinds of angels, but the Ramchal says that we can give them a general categorization. Shehu asuga malachim, called these are angelic beings, right? So I don't know if we should write it out, but we'll just you have physical and spiritual. Physical, you have the upper ones, the outer space, and the lower ones, everything in this physical world. Spiritual, you have two categories of creations. You have souls, and you have kochot. You have souls and you have nivdalim, right? Transcendental beings. and the souls come down into the body, and the nivdalim don't come down into the body, and that's also subcategorized into angels and to kochot, forces, spiritual forces in the world. Look at that, one paragraph, and he just summed it all up. I can close down some of those university classes. We got it all clear here now. No? Philosophy. Okay. ואולם נמצא מין אחד של נבראים שהוא כמו אמצע, and this is interesting. I don't think anybody could predict what the Ramchal is going to say here. There's one specific exception to this rule. It's a little bit different. What do you guys think he's going to talk about without looking at it?
People?
Huh? That's what I would think, right? He's going to talk about us, how we're exceptional in a minute, but that's not what he's talking about here. All right, guys, don't get spooked out here. There is one part of creation, which is actually was the last thing created in the 6 days of creation. Which is kind of like in between spiritual and physical. And it's in one sense it's not felt with our senses. We can't experience with our senses. And also it doesn't play by the rules. It's not limited by the regular limitations of other physical beings. That's on one hand. And therefore, in that sense, we would call it not necessarily in a 100% pure and accurate sense, but we call it spiritual, in the sense that we can't sense it with our senses, and it's not limited by the laws of physical nature as we know them. But it's not an angel. It's different from an angel, even though it's similar to an angel in certain aspects. It has its own set of rules and laws of governing how it functions. According to the way it is in this world as created. I never usually pronounce this word, but this one is called a shedi. Demons. That's right, we believe in them. Shehu min ashedim. Though this is talking about demons. Ve'ulam gam hu yitchalek lepratim achadim. And also among those, for now I'm going to call them Shin Dalid. Among those Shin Dalids, they have their own set of rules and there's different levels of them. Sheyashuv שישוב המין הכללי סוג לגביהם והם מינים אליו. How does it function and how does it interact with the world, right? A different set of laws. Very interesting, right? Very unpredictable, a very weird thing. It's like you have all these things, but then there's this one, right? And there's the last thing that was created. Shindals was the last thing created. You guys know that one of the names of HaShem that's created to creation, and specifically to the end of creation, is the name of that was on the mezuzah, Shin and Dalet and Yud, right? Shakai and one of the reasons why Chazal say that name of Hashem is creation. She'amar le'olamo die, she, and then die. That he said die until here, to the world, right? So the second to last of creations that was created in this world was us. Mankind, right? Hashem created the whole world, and then He made us, and He put us in this world that was already made for us. And the last thing was this Shin Dalet, and that's why it stops short of that last letter of Hashem's name. Instead of Shin Dalet and Yud, it's Shin Dalet, right? And they serve a function, which we're not going to talk about right now, but they serve a function. It's not something that we really talk about so much. The Ben Ish Chai says that those are not forces that we really have to be worried about right now, because of the spiritual state of the world, right? Kabbalistic literature talks about them more. The Gemara talks about them plenty, and there was communication with them, and there was all kinds of very interesting interactions, how to see them, all kinds of weird.
1 second. Is there room for my friend Aaron?
Absolutely. So, and in any event, this is not we're not going to make a big deal because it's not such a big deal. But the point is that they kind of defy the rules both of the spiritual beings and the physical beings. So V'hine, next paragraph. V'hine nivchan v'nivdal min ha'adam levado. And then the mankind stands out from all of creations because we are unique, not in the same sense as lahavdil as the shindalas, but in a different way. Liot mokav mishnei minei briim nivdalim legamre, because we're comprised of two exactly opposite and separate parts of creation. And there's nothing in the physical world that is also spiritual, like a spiritual being. And there's nothing in the spiritual world, like we said, that becomes enclosed in the physical, except for mankind, right? Which that doesn't mean that, which we'll see soon, that doesn't mean that there's a clean and sharp separation between the physical and the spiritual. There's not. Everything is very, very blended. But in general, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world that there's physical beings and there's spiritual beings, right? That's how the creation breaks up. But mankind actually contains both of them at the same time. Da'inu anishama elyona ve'aguf hashafan. In other words, the exalted soul and the lowly body. Now, lowly body in the sense that the body is made up of, the lowest elements of creation, right? If we have creation starting from HaShem all the way down to the bottom, you have all the angels and all the spiritual worlds, and then you find at the very, very bottom you have this physical world, right? And then the physical the elements of this world, right? Inanimate objects, that's what our bodies are made of, right? And so it's the lowest part of creation combined with the highest part of creation, which is our souls. Which is unlike all other creations. And this is a very famous dialogue that took place between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the angels. And Hashem, the angels said, how could you possibly give Ribbon Shalom, your most precious, beloved Torah to these people who are in the physical world? They have the same bodies as an orangutan, right? They have the same bodies as how can you give your Torah to, right? Imagine, right? That's what it looked like to them. They couldn't, because now they're probably used to it by this point. But at the beginning, it's like like imagine bringing a Sefer Torah into the zoo and putting it in the right, and you're going to give it to the orangutans. That's what it looked like to them, right? So Rabbi Shalom said, you guys can't do like they can do, right? And I think the Baal Tanya says that if an angel would come into this world and have to be put into a physical body and to withstand the struggles of that tremendous dichotomy that we have between the physical and the spiritual, right? Meaning that our bodies are totally physical and our souls are totally spiritual, and they have to work together, and we have somehow to find a way to guide that, right, in a harmonious way, right? The angels would explode. They would just burn up. There's no way that they could contain themselves in this world, right? And their souls are not as high. Their spiritual stature is not as high as our souls. Our souls are the highest beings in creation, right? And we don't feel that way when we act in physical ways. When we act like in this world, we don't see ourselves as so lofty. We don't see ourselves as angels. Matter of fact, when we talk about someone who's a really, really spiritual person, we call him an angel. It's like, wow, he's like an angel, right? But all of us are higher than angels, but we don't experience it like that, right? V'kan tzarich shetizaher shelo titeh lachshov. And here says the Ramchal, you have to be careful and not to make the mistake to think sheyeh inyan shar baalei chaim ki inyan adam. Don't think that other animals are like man. It's two different zachen. So it kind of drives me crazy when I read in books, and it's just like it's like an accepted thing in secular thinking that man is just another animal, right? We're not another animal, right? Ramchal is going to explain how we're similar, how we're different, but it's two different things, right? They may look the same. Ki ein nefesh habaalei chaim ela davar gashmi. Listen, this is a big chiddush. It might be very surprising. The soul of animals is physical. It's a physical creation. It's not a spiritual creation. We're going to see again that everything in this world really is spiritual and has a connection to spirituality and is sourced in spirituality. But their soul, right? When you see the animal and he has emotions, and those emotions look very, very similar to our emotions, right? So it's familiar, right? There's a reason why it's familiar, but don't think that means that we're like the dog, we're like the orangutan. It's a physical thing. Their soul is physical. Mina dakim shebagashmiut. It's from the finest and highest. The I don't know how to exactly how to describe this, but dakim shebagashmiut means like if you have within all of physicality, like you have the highest levels of physicality, meaning the closest to spirituality, and then the lowest levels, where less godliness can be seen. When you pick up a rock, you don't feel any vitality in life in a rock, unless you're a very special, sensitive person, right? You pick up a plant, you feel that there's more life to that, right? There's a reason why, I mean, the desert is a beautiful place, but I think more people like to go to the forest, and people get excited when there's greenery and life, right? Because you feel there's more livelihood. And animals clearly have more life than right than plant life, right? They're so right. And then there's human beings, of course, which are having everything. But there just I'm trying to explain that within physicality, there's also levels, right? So the soul of the nefesh of animals, it's physical, but it's the highest level of the physicality. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. ומעניינו נמצא גם כן באדם. And the same thing that you have in animals, you have in mankind. Right? But wait a minute, didn't you just tell us that we're not animals? Right? So he says, בבחינת היותו בעל חי. Since we also have the level of chai inside of us, right? In Hebrew, just go through those 4 levels. An animate object is domem, plant life is tzomeach, animal life is chai, it's alive. And then there's medaber, speaking, human beings, right? The Kuzari also, as everybody knows, adds a 5th level called Yisrael, which is even higher than just man, right? But here it said that we have those levels inside of us. We have chai inside of us. So everything that the animal has, we also have inside of us. We just have more, right? Don't stop there. Omnam zulat kol zeh yesh b'adam neshama elyon. But besides that nefesh balance, we have I guess I'm sure many of you have learned the Tanya. Tanya explains it. We have a nefesh ba'ami. We have an animal soul. That animal soul is exactly like the soul that the lion and the tiger and the giraffe all have. They all have that same animal soul, right? Each one has its different flavor, right? So all the things the animal has, we have inside of us. Maybe that's why we see ourselves as animals, and maybe that's why we can identify with those different experiences that we see in animals, right? I remember as a kid, my brother and I would watch these flocks of there's like I guess there must have been how do you say pigeons. This big, huge. I don't know if it was pigeons. I don't know what type of bird. And they were next to this river, and they would all land on this one tree, and then like one of them would fly out, and then everybody would get nervous, and they'd go flying after him, and they'd go to the next tree, and then another one, and they were just going from tree to tree. So we would have the best time. We would talk. We would speak out like what we imagined they were thinking, what was going on, and the social anxiety that they were experiencing, and the fear, and like we better get out of here quick because everybody's going to the next tree. We don't be left behind, right? But it's all imagination. Like the emotions that we have are mixed also with our animal soul and also with our godly soul. We have very, very high experiences, and we shouldn't think that the same experiences that we have are the experiences they have, even though it's very familiar, right? There is overlap. But it doesn't end there, right? And mankind is terribly selling themselves short by believing that we're just an animal and we're limited in the same way that the animals are limited, right? And the person doesn't realize that there's something exalted that they could be experiencing and reaching, and they certainly don't feel a responsibility to be anything more than just a more sophisticated animal, and that's a terrible shame of that belief, right? So, but anyway, back into the Ramchal, he says, but not only do we have that animal soul inside of us, we also have an exalted soul. Shehi min bria bifnei atzmo. That's something totally separate, a totally different thing. Nivdal min aguf legamle. It's totally separated from the goof, from the body. It's totally has nothing to do with physicality. The soul has nothing to do with physicality. V'rachok mimenu ad meod. And it's very, very distant from the body. And if you would ask the soul, give me a list of the top 100 things that you would want to do, or the top 1,000,000 things you want to do, right? The very last thing on the list would be, I would like to go experience what it's like to be inside of a body, right? The soul has no idea. The soul's, imagine, just like we said, if an angel would come inside of a body, so it would just burn up. It couldn't handle it. So the soul is much higher than an angel, right? Our souls are much higher than that. So what would you like to do today? I'd like to go and be a body, be totally. It's like choosing to go into a solitary confinement in the gulag or something. That's what the soul experience is, going into the body. Because that's where you can turn my world into spirituality. That's where you can reveal me. That's where you can fulfill your job in this world and develop a greater dveikus to me, right? So the soul does it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ties them together. He binds them together, right? That's what Ramchal says. Shabbat v'nikshirabo comes and is tied together, connected. According to Hashem's decree. Hashem decrees it. For the purpose that we've described in the previous chapters. What's man's job in this world? Is just to attach himself to Hashem, right? Using this physical world, right? But just I'm trying to remember when I first learned this concept, it used to kind of like bother me a little bit. I'm having trouble figuring out exactly why, but something bothered me about the fact that why do you have to, it's like, okay, we're one being, why do you have to, like, this milchama, this war that is going inside of us, why do we have to stress that, right? It's not that we're stressing it, it's that we're experiencing, that's just the reality, right? But it doesn't have to be a war, and it's not supposed to be a war, right? But if you would ask it, like I said, if you ask the soul, like, it's not on the top 10 things that it would like to do. It's not a pleasure for the soul, just to be in the physical world with all of its greatness and everything. So, it's not. That's not where it's at for the soul, right? But that's what it is. So we are a unique. We are the only unique part of the entire creation, right? All the worlds, everything in this physical world is different than us. We're different. You ever get that feeling that you're different? Right? We're different, Chevra. We're different from everything, right? And we're the only thing that combines all of that together, right? Everything stays in its place, and only mankind traverses the whole thing. You guys remember? I think I told you before that the Nefesh Chaim, Rav Chaim Volozhiner, explains that the dream that Yaakov Avinu had of the Sulam Yaakov, of the ladder, right? That it says that it's the bottom of it was grounded in the earth, and the head, its top reached the heavens, right? So the Volozhiner explains that that's the soul that's our soul. It comes all the way from the highest place in the heavens, in the spiritual world, traverses everything. You have a connection in all those worlds, right? And the Kabbalistic Sfarim, Chassidic Sfarim talk very, very much about this. You have a place in each one of those worlds, because your soul, right? It's kind of like Lahabdil in the old. I don't know if they still have it in the fire stations. You got the firemen are sleeping on the third floor, and they got the pole to get down all the way there, right? Your soul goes all the way down into this world, and you're grounded into this physical body, right? But that's not where it ends. You're not only up there, and you're not only down here. You traverse all of it. You have a place. You're connected to all those angels, right? Ramchal's going to explain later, not today, that in the morning in Shachris when we talk about the angels, and the angels say Kadosh, 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 right? And in Kedusha we talk about the angels. Why are we talking about the angels in our davening, right? And the answer is, and we not only talk about the angels, we also talk about how Hashem brings the light, makes the earth, right? We talk about all these different elements because we are connected to all of them. We have a part in all of them. Those angels are waiting for us, right? You guys know that when we say Kedusha, it's such a very holy part of the davening, right? Because the angels can't praise Hashem until we praise Hashem, right? What is going on with our brother? You guys, we're davening in the late minyan today. What do you, right? So, but their vote is dependent on us. They're connected to the whole thing. Okay. Weiter. Base. Questions? Comments?
I wanted to ask a question about the topic earlier about the Shin Dalet. The Rav says we are not bothered about it, but are we talking about the Klal or the Prat?
Meaning like each individual person?
Yeah.
Right, so the Micha says that they don't have so much power anymore. The Gemara says that if we could see, if our eyes could see them, then a person would never leave his apartment. He'll never leave his house.
Even the mezuzah.
Huh? Yeah, he said the mezuzah protects us on the inside of the house. But if you connect yourself to the mezuzah, there's a lot of svarim to talk about when you leave your house, to put your hand on the mezuzah and to pray that Hashem should protect you as you're going out. Because the mezuzah is really protection for the inside of the house. But the Gemara says that you wouldn't be able to walk in the street because it's so filled with it. Right? You wouldn't see them when you feel them. If you had the items, so you wouldn't do it. But the thing Hashem doesn't have to be worried about it, because just like you don't have prophecy today. All these spiritual levels, so it's always balanced on the negative spirituality and the positive spirituality. Really, those shindals, they serve a positive function, which we'll learn about one day. But Shlomo Melech used them. They were servants of Shlomo Melech, and knew how to use them properly. But they can only be damaging to us when we're not on our game, so to speak. We don't have to really be worried about it today, because they're not so potent. They're still there, but they don't have so much power.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a question, Ethan?
I'm just wondering, what does it mean that the angels wait for us to pray when just minyans going all around the world? Right?
All right. That's a good question. I'm gonna answer. Could be different. Could be the angels that are connected to those souls. Right. I don't know. That's a good question. Right. Okay. Weiter. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Bet. ונבראים הגשמים ידועים הם אצלנו, וחוקותיהם ומשפטיהם הטבעיים בכללם מפורסמים. We know very well all the physical creations, right? Especially in our generation, when you can go to the zoo, you can put on, nature. What do you call it? Nature Channel, and you can see everything that there exists that has been discovered so far. So many more species than we knew ever before, right? But we know, in general, the physical world. We know the laws of nature, what governs the physical world, right? He said they're well known. But spiritual creations, the ones that have no physicality at all, it's impossible for us to really imagine them or to understand them clearly, right? It's outside of our imagination, our ability to be able to grasp, which is an amazing thing. Our thoughts, which are the most spiritual aspect of our experience, maybe, our thoughts can only grasp something in physical terms. Right? It's not only. I don't want to say that, because the truth is we can't have purely spiritual thoughts. Right? The PSS Rabbi talks about that at length. But in general, we can only relate to and imagine something that has physical form, some type of physical experience, right? And that's why, again, shalom, and that's why the what do you call it? Right. Kadosh Baruch Hu talks, right, and the prophets speak in terms of physicality, even when they're talking about spiritual things, right? In order that we can relate to it. But if you want to literally talk about angels and just spiritual creation, spiritual beings, so describe it to me, right? I can't describe it to you. I remember once on Purim, that's Purim season, and I was sitting with a yeshiva bocher, and he was like kind of quiet, and so I asked him, tell me what you love about learning Torah. He said, I don't know, I like it all. I said, yeah, but tell me more. Tell me a little bit more. He said, I like learning Gemara. I said, you get a lot of pleasure out of it? He said, yeah. I said, describe to me the pleasure. He said, try. He said, did you ever eat chocolate? I said, yeah. He said, describe for me the experience of eating chocolate. You can't describe. That's a totally physical thing, right? But the pleasure of it's not physical. Right? The pleasure is spiritual. Spiritual things, we don't have the language or the ability to communicate this. We can't understand angels. We can't understand kochot fully. So listen to what the Ramchal says in my sefer. I've got this underlined and next to it says klal gadol. It's a major klal. ונדבר בהם ובענייניהם רק כפי המסורת שבידינו. And therefore, we can only speak about them. We can only speak about the tradition that we've received about them. Right? We don't speculate when it comes to spiritual things. Right? That's a very important klal. Matter of fact, there's some people that took issue with the Rambam in his Sefer Moreh Nevuchim, the guide for the perplexed, because he spoke about many spiritual things based on inference and based on logical, conclusions that he came to. And this is, he actually wrote the Rambam. You guys know the Rambam didn't have the Kabbalistic tradition. At the end of his life, he received a copy of the Zohar. I don't know if at the end of his life, but after he had written most of his compositions, and he wrote, there's a letter that Rav Yosef Kapach had, that he wrote, that had he had this tradition before, there's certain things that he would have written differently. Not his halacha. His halacha doesn't need a Kabbalistic tradition, but the things that he spoke about, like he speaks at length in Moreh Nevuchim about angels and souls and different worlds and stuff like that, just based on inferences from the few cryptic things that we have written in the Gemara and the Midrash, right? But in the Kabbalistic tradition, that's where we have a tradition that explains to us the different things that go on in the spiritual worlds and the different spiritual beings. And we're not allowed to just kind of like infer and extrapolate and try to understand dava mitoch dava, try to understand things that are implicit. We only have what we have passed down. I remember once being in a shiur with my Rav and learning with Shlita, and there was another student, and we were learning deeper things, Kabbalistic things, and there was another student that wanted to extrapolate and connect and make connections. He says, Rav, so couldn't you say that since this says this, and we know that this is like this from the Gemara and that, so can't you say that the conclusion is like that? And my Rav, he has this very, very heavy, holy countenance, and he go like this. No. And it's called Kabbalah. Kabbalah means it's received. Kabbalah means receiving. This is not something you can't make up. You can't create new ideas in Kabbalah. You can explain them more clearly, right? But we have to have things we have to have them as tradition. That's why we know them, right? There's no way we can know these things without tradition, and to think that a person could just make them up. It's impossible to make these things up, and it's inappropriate for us to make these things up. So we tread with caution when we talk about these spiritual things. But the Ramchal, he qualifies it in that sense. He says, I can't tell you anything more than we've received. Right? That's the bottom line. And from the major principles that we have passed down regarding this, that it can I guess I don't know how to translate that in this context. That in connection with every physical thing that we have in creation, there are spiritual forces above, meaning of the spiritual worlds, that are connected to and driving. That's their source. They come out from there, right? In a form or in a way or in a system that was decided. The word here hishtalshalut comes from the word shalshelet, which means like a chain. Right? At one, I don't know if you guys can think of another word that translates it better, but braided. Like a chain in the sense of like one cause and effect, a series of kind of like dominoes in a certain sense, right? Or like a chain. The word that Chachamim uses shalshelet, because like a chain, like each link in the chain, right, is dependent on the link before it. There's a spiritual source, a spiritual force or energy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, And that is the source of all things in this physical world, and they're connected through that chain of links. ושבלים האלה הם ומקריהם, and the things in this physical world and all the things that happen with it, נמצאים הכוחות. So everything that happens. So let's say, just take one example. Wind, ruach, is a physical thing, right? But there's a koach, there's a spiritual force behind wind. That's the source of wind. Every time, however the winds go, how strong they are, in what order they go, what causes them, right? What stops them, all the different laws and rules that regulate wind, all are based in that original koach. So it comes out that these are the source. There's a spiritual source for everything physical. והנמצאים השבלים ענפים ותולדות לכוחותיהם. It comes out that the actual physical manifestation of that creation is really just it's really just a manifestation of that spiritual source. Right? It's not that Baruch Hu said, okay, way back when, 5,000 whatever years ago, let there be wind. Right? No. There's a spiritual source for wind, and all stuff that happens with wind and all the life of wind is an ongoing connection, and it's a manifestation of that spiritual source. It's not just a physical thing. They're connected like the links of a chain, all the way up to that spiritual source. Right? Just this last little paragraph, and we'll conclude today. Another tradition that we have, that's a tradition. Right? We would never know that there's a spiritual source for everything physical. Right? How is it possible for people to come in this generation and say, I don't believe in spirituality? Right? The reason why it's possible is because we don't sense spirituality. We can't pick it up with our five senses. It's below the radar, it's above the radar. Right? So this is a tradition that we have. Without the tradition, we wouldn't know it. Another tradition we have that every single piece, item of creation, and all the different ongoings of creation, there's an appointed angel for that item. And their job is to sustain that item of creation. Or to cause things to happen, to occur to that creation. That's lifetime. And to renew and to sustain and to renew that item according to Hashem's infinite wisdom. What does that mean? I'll say, you guys I'm sure have heard, the Midrash says that that every single blade of grass has an angel for it. Each blade, not just there's an angel of the grass. No, there's a koach of the grass, but for each actual item, each actual blade of grass, each tree, each fruit, each mosquito has an angel, one of an angel for it only. The Midrash says grow, or when it's time to wither. High it's going to be. All this is determined by that angel, the spiritual force behind it. Right? Those are the two traditions that Hashem support. Next week, I guess, is a Purim, so we're not going to Purim outside of Yerushalayim. I don't know if you're here or not. But Hashem, the Ramchal will tie together more how we